Welcome back to the show. After taking a break now from all the wide receiver talk, we're going to get into more of an open discussion about some of the rookie quarterbacks today and also in the past and how they compare a little bit in terms of being ready for the moment, being prepared to go out there and lead from such a young age, from such an inexperienced position, and having success off of that. Because already we know that Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and apparently after news broke today, Bo Nix are going to start as rookie quarterbacks in week one. And we could also even see Drake May potentially start for the Patriots. So at most, we could see 3 to 4 quarterbacks starting in week one. And while, we've been very impressed by them, we've seen them perform in preseason games against, adult men making a living out off of playing football. It's exciting to see them go out there and perform, be very efficient, be very exciting, creating some magic out of nowhere also. And not only is it exciting for the fans and everything like that, but also for the organization. It shows that, you did a good job. They give themselves a pat on the back, saying that we drafted our guy, we found our franchise guy. And while all that might be true, a lot of things that come with the evaluation of quarterbacks, and not only bringing in the right guy, but also through this period of workouts, training camp, and everything like that, if he has a chance to start, I feel like people don't really take into account the mental and the psychological part of such a young player, and not just any player, the face of your franchise, the quarterback, the most important position on the field. Not a lot of people take into account how ready they are mentally when they are deciding to make this decision of starting a 24, 22, 21-year-old quarterback coming off of a college season. And in this discussion, there was Bill Parcells who made a comment on this, and also Tom Brady speaking over the weekend on the level of preparedness that these rookie quarterbacks, are forced almost to start in the NFL by lacking that command, that control. But before we get into what Tom Brady said, I thought Bill Parcells made a good point about this earlier on this week when he mentioned it, and talking about starting rookie quarterbacks from his point of view, obviously being one of the greater ones that we've seen in recent history in terms of head coaches. He spoke on the Boston Globe recently in regards to the hype around Drake May and starting rookie quarterbacks just in general. He said, fans never consider the psychological makeup of the player you're getting ready to throw to the wolves. What you really have to judge is the timing and the chance to succeed. Sometimes, if they don't succeed, it destroys them. And he goes on afterwards to say, fans will say, well, if he can't take it, we don't want him anyway. But when this is a high draft choice, you've got to do everything in your power to allow him to have a chance to succeed. And to me, that resonated pretty resoundingly, just because, again, it speaks a lot to the fact that, a lot of times you're looking at the physical makeup, how, exciting they are when they take off for a 20-yard run, they escape a sack, they escape another one, and then they just chuck it down the field, they make a good throw on the sideline and things like that. It all looks great, like they've done this a million times, like it's almost too easy for them in a sense, but when you see it, the context of it matters. Playing in preseason is obviously not playing like it is in the regular season. And once you get to the regular season, every week counts pretty much, just because it's not like an NBA season, obviously, or an MLB season where you're playing multiple games a week. You can drop one here, you can drop a couple in a week, and you're still considered one of the best teams in that respective sport. You have to almost win as many games as possible to give yourself a chance in each conference, because now, more so than not, I think ever, honestly, the competition within each conference is very high, and it seems like almost a bunch of the teams, it almost seems like there's 4 or 5 teams at least in each conference that has an elite level quarterback, and there's only 7 spots in the playoffs. So starting a rookie and believing that they're able to, carry that pressure right away, right after making the transition, or I shouldn't even say making the transition, trying to make that transition over from college to the NFL. It's a lot. It's a lot, not only dealing with the physical side of it, obviously, week to week, being that guy expecting to perform, but also the mental side of not performing well one day, making a bad throw, making a bad read, and knowing that afterwards the media is going to kill you. Maybe the fans start to turn on you. And that's where I think Bill Parcells is sort of coming from that state, and something that he obviously took into account when he was the head coach. And similarly, when I recently saw Tom Brady speak at Fanatics Fest over the weekend on a edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, he spoke in an interview with him and talked about one thing that he really didn't like in regards to rookie quarterbacks. And I also have that statement. He said during Fanatics Fest that I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early, but the reality is the only reason why they are is because we've dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. And afterwards he added that quarterbacks don't have the same expertise, don't have the same command and control of an offense coming in when they are ready to start, in comparison to now where they are just forced to start and they don't really know too well what to do out there when things go bad. You know, he mentioned a good example of seeing sometimes how rookies are out there, and he related it back to himself when he mentioned that sometimes he would get a play call that they've worked on all week and he'd get it, he'd think, great, we got this play, and he'd look at the defense and think, wow, this play's going to work, this is perfect, let's snap the ball. But in other instances, when he was a young player in the league, after developing so many years as the backup, even going to college as well, bringing that level of expertise to him, when he did get a chance to start, if the call that came in wasn't going to work against that set defense, he was able to audible change it and snap that ball knowing that that play was going to work. Nowadays, he alluded to the fact that quarterbacks now, because they don't have that same control, because they're not really prepped, they're not really developed from college into the NFL, that they just snap the ball anyway, and they are just accepting of the fact that the play's not going to work. They're going to try to make it work, but a lot of times it leads to a lot of mistakes, and then that way they make that mistake or the play just blows up and they look like the bad guy. They look like they don't know what they're doing. They look like they've made the wrong read, and that way, you know, not a lot of fans take into account that, you know, they're just not mentally there to make that play. They don't have the mental experience. They don't have the mental reps to say, this defense is lined up like this, I'm going to audible to this play and make sure everyone's in line this way, rather than just calling the play anyway because that's what the coach thinks is going to work. And from that point on, both of those statements kind of reminded me of what we talked about yesterday with Tua Tagovailoa and the comments that he made with Brian Flores, and, you know, just that physical aspect of rookies and how Bill Parcells put it, almost like when you have a young guy like Tua coming in, a guy that you're supposed to invest in highly because they drafted him at number 5, with that psychological part of the game already being a question, you know, nobody knows how Tua's approaching this situation of eventually maybe getting the chance to start. He's still trying to learn everything that comes into being the starting quarterback, being a quarterback in general in the NFL. He's still trying to get that all in line. And then after years of this going on, you hear how Brian Flores was almost talking down on him, saying that you shouldn't be here, this other guy should be here, you haven't earned this, and that destroys their mental side of it, obviously. And not only that, but like Bill Parcells said, I'll pull it up again, one of the biggest things he says is that you're getting ready to throw them to the wolves. What you really have to judge is the timing and the chance to succeed. Sometimes if they don't succeed, it destroys them. And I feel like that was almost what happened to Tua in that situation with Brian Flores. And not to just specify to this situation, but it just brought it up to me because I talked about it yesterday. The fact that you threw him to the wolves halfway through the year, and he might have been super nervous, super unprepared to take that role right away. You just felt pressure to throw him out there because he was a first-round pick. Then not only that, not only are you allegedly talking down on him and making him less confident in himself, then you go ahead and bench him not once, but twice for Ryan Fitzpatrick. And in that mind, people think that, oh, Tua's a bust. Tua just got benched twice. He has no capabilities, no skill of being the starting quarterback, where in reality, people don't think about the mental side on how being benched twice is pretty embarrassing for being a first round pick and being a top 5 pick on top of that, and having all the success that you had at Alabama, to have that embarrassment happen to you on the field, but also having Brian Flores talk to you in that way, all of that, is bundled up into what you see on the field sometimes, and people just think it's a lack of skill or it's a lack of ability, where they don't take into account this other side of it, which I think is important. And also, just talking more so on what Tom Brady said, they're not truly ready to start in a lot of situations because of that lack of command, the lack of years preparing for a situation where they've had to audible, they've had to change the play. A lot of times, especially in college, you're starting to see the transition from it, where players are just starting to hop from team to team, and they're not really learning, or they're not really developing, earning their spots on these teams. And it, like he said, it's almost dumbing the game down, where they spend a year here, they spend a year there, and they don't really learn too much about an offense or being comfortable enough with it to audible and make all these adjustments. By the time they enter the draft and they, get drafted to any team, they are expected to do that at this highest level, because that's what defenses sometimes force you to do, and they struggle with that. So it almost goes hand in hand with the psychological part of it, not being prepared, and getting bundled up into how this could all go wrong. Because what the funny thing about coaches and the level of engaging, the level of preparedness for these young rookie quarterbacks, I know there's obviously a lot of pressure to start them. It almost feels like someone's breathing on the back of your neck, because you have all this pressure to start this highly drafted rookie, and you feel like you need to start them. Maybe that's what Brian Flores was feeling at the time, but at the same time, if they're not ready, and at the same time you don't gauge the mental side of it, how prepared they really are in mastering that offense, what ends up happening at the end of the day is that coach ends up being fired, and then you're looked upon as the bad guy in the entire situation. You end up losing your job, and then unideally, you get a situation like Tua. If you're Brian Flores, he stays, you get fired, and a couple years from now, Tua is one of the best quarterbacks, or was one of the best quarterbacks just last year, and that doesn't look good on you as well. It shows a lack of, evaluation in rookie quarterbacks and things like that, and I think I would agree with Tom Brady in saying that more so than not, quarterbacks nowadays are more unprepared, and it is harder to see and gauge which quarterbacks are ready to start. And that's why I started this off with mentioning how we could have 4 quarterbacks starting, because it is a lot and it is exciting, but the level and the idea that they are all ready to start right now, it's highly unlikely that all of them are at this high level of knowing the offense perfectly, knowing how to audible out of plays, and the mental side that comes with it as well. You don't truly know how they're going to react to that. So yeah, a lot of them are starting, but I just worry that maybe it could be a little bit too quick for some of them. I would have loved to seen Jacoby Brissett play. I mean, that one's not subtle, but I would like Jacoby to start. Ideally, I would have liked Jarrett Stidham to start. And it was different for Caleb and Jaden, just because they were drafted so highly. They almost always start when you're drafted that high as well. So that's really all of this that I kind of wanted to open up with, and open this segment up on the mental side of it, the unpreparedness. It all goes hand in hand, and these 2 quotes are pretty important, I thought, pretty significant in really highlighting these factors, and it has to do with the quarterbacks that we're going to see just in 2024, how they deal with this, and almost like a warning, I guess I am providing, that if they do struggle, sometimes it's just not the fact that they're not capable of doing it, they don't have the skill. Sometimes it's the mental side of things that a lot of people don't pick out. So just as a warning, I guess, to kind of consider that if a lot of them, all of them, one of them starts to struggle in 2024. But that's all pretty much I wanted to say on that topic, and we have a couple more to get to on today's show. Staying on the topic of quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, highlighting the fact that he played this past weekend in the preseason, which I'm a fan of, but the way that he did it and who he played with raised a lot of questions in the media, so we're going to highlight that. And also, in the last segment, we're going to go through some potential changes still coming to the new kickoff format before the start of the regular season. So stay tuned to that. We'll be right back after this break.